Welcome back to Thrive in the Word. We are studying through the book of 1 Peter, and today we're in 1 Peter, the 5th chapter, starting with verse number 5. Now, in verses 1 through 4, Peter is talking to the elders in the church. And in verse number 5, Peter changes and he begins to really talk to different segments and to all the people in the body of Christ. Now, let me remind you that 1 Peter is written to believers. It's written to believers who are Jewish, first of all. It's written to many of these believers who have been part of the church of Jerusalem, but they have been under such persecution that they have left the area of Jerusalem and they have dispersed all around the known world at that time. And so Peter is writing to these people, and he's wrote now to the elders, and now he's writing to those who are in the body of Christ. And this is what he says, and he calls out at the beginning of verse number 5, a certain group of men, and we're going to explain to you what that group of men are. It says, "You younger men likewise be subject to your elders." What's he saying? He's talking to younger men. Now, he's talking not to younger believers, he's talking to younger men as far as age. Actually, the Greek word for younger means someone who is fresh or someone that's new. He's talking to an age group here, and he's talking to young men. Now, what does he say to these young men? He says, "Young men likewise be subject to your elders." Now, let me explain. The word elder is the Greek word presbyteros. But now the Greek word presbyteros can be used in two different ways in the scriptures, or is used in two different ways in the scriptures. One way is in talking about the leadership of a church. And that's the way that word is used most of the time. But it also can be used in addressing the older people of the church, or older people, older gentlemen. Now, Peter is Jewish, and one of the traditions of the Jewish faith is that the older men took the responsibility of teaching the younger men. That's part of the Jewish tradition. Now, there's many Jewish families today that are no longer traditional Jews. But a traditional Jewish family will always have the older men assigned to teach, and to teach particularly to the younger men. And because of that, the Jewish faith, even though small in numbers, has had tremendous impact on the world. There is not one type of people, one ethnic group that has had as much impact on the world as the Jewish people. And so I believe that even though the majority of my audience is not Jewish, I believe that we as believers need to take these words of Peter to heart. That we need to understand that young men, you need to be in subjection to older men, to elders. In other words, young men, you need to come under the supervision of older men. Now, we live in a time where older men are many times laughed at and they're mocked. You watch some of the television programs, and older men are played off as being stupid and being not in touch with the times and all this stuff. But you know what? There is tremendous value in what an older man has done, and what an older man has seen, and what an older man can teach a younger man. And I believe that's exactly what Peter is talking about. I don't believe that Peter is telling these younger men that they need to be in subjection to the elders, because, first of all the body of Christ should be in subjection to the spiritual elders. I believe what Peter is talking about here is that younger men need to come under subjection to the older men. Now, again, it's not for the older men to rule over them. It's for the older men to have the ability to train. If you were to go into one of the armed services, you know what? One of the first things you're going to do is you're going to run into a man, and he's going to yell at you. He's going to scream at you, but he's there for a purpose. He's there to get you to understand the value of learning from experience. And you see, our young men in our churches need to learn from the experiences of the older men. Now, I don't think there's that what Peter does next is by chance. I believe this is a divinely inspired word, because Peter then says next, and all of you, clothe yourselves with humility towards one another. What are you supposed to do? What's Peter saying here? He's saying, clothe yourselves. In other words, put on humility towards one another. What is humility? Is it walking around saying, oh, I'm just a dog. I have no value. I'm no good. No, that's not humility. That's stupidity. Do you understand? Humility is the ability to learn and the ability to receive from someone else. And here Peter has said to these young men, you need to be subject. You need to be under older men. And what's the reason? So that they can learn. And then he adds to this, and all of you need to be humble. You need to clothe yourselves with humility towards one another. And then he says, for God is opposed to the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. You see, we need to understand that God stands against those who say, I can do it myself. But to those who are humble, God is there to give grace. And you know, when you take an older man and the young man is humble, you know what that older man can give him? Not only can he give him wisdom, but he can give him grace. Now, what is grace? Grace is the unmerited ability to accomplish all that God's given you to accomplish. So Peter here is talking, and he's talking first to young men, and then he's including everybody. And then he brings in this aspect, this element of humility. And what does the humility do? The humility brings to us the ability to receive grace, not only the grace of God, but grace that comes from other believers into our lives. I hope that this is ministered to you today, and may God bless you until we speak to you again.